Hello, good afternoon, and a very warm welcome to all of you who are tuning in to today's webinar on data protection for charities, managing and securing electronic personal data. I am Valencia So from Harry Elias Partnership, and thank you for carving out your afternoon today to join in today's program. In this increasingly digitalized world that we live in today, cybersecurity threats are rampant and getting more serious and extensive. Many organizations around the world have realized the importance of strengthening their data protection capabilities to fight and defend themselves and their stakeholders against the various implications and adverse consequences of data breaches. In Singapore, data protection has also been recognized as crucial with the enactment of the Personal Data Protection Act in 2012 and also proposed amendments to the Act being discussed and underway in recent months this year. Steps and measures are being undertaken on a wide scale to guard against the risks and threats associated with this digital and increasingly connected age. Charities are no different in this race. There is no immunity to malicious cybersecurity activities out there. So the Commissioner of Charities have launched an initiative to uplift the digital capabilities of all charities in this respect. In particular, a data protection guide for charities managing and securing electronic personal data, jointly developed by COC in partnership with Harry Elias Partnership, has been in the pipeline. The goal of this guide is to assist charities to begin taking steps to enhance and reinforce their cybersecurity measures and protect stakeholder and donor information that is in their possession. Now, before I go on any further, I would like to just share with you some housekeeping notes for today's webinar to help all of you follow the program and observe some key pointers during the program. So firstly, all participants are automatically muted when the webinar is ongoing. Second, during the webinar, you will be able to submit questions at any time through the Q&A button. So please feel free to click the Q&A button to submit any questions that you have for our speakers today. After the presentations by the speakers, there will be a Q&A session. Our speakers will be using this time to answer as many of the questions submitted by you as possible. And lastly, there will be a post-webinar survey at the end of the webinar. We would appreciate having your valuable feedback during your participation in this survey. So that's it for the housekeeping aspect. And moving on, today we are very pleased and privileged to have with us two distinguished speakers to share about this cybersecurity initiative and guide charities to appreciate the importance of taking the relevant measures to protect data and implement them. So without further ado, let me introduce our speakers for today. First off, we have Dr. Ang Hak Singh. Dr. Ang is the Deputy Secretary of MCCY, leading the ministry's efforts in Singapore Cares, the national movement to foster a more caring, compassionate, and inclusive society. He is also appointed as Commissioner of Charities, the COC. Concurrent to these appointments, Dr. Ang is a fellow Chartered Accountant of the Institute of Singapore Chartered Accountants and a Chartered Accountant with the Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand. He also serves as an adjunct professor with the NTU and SUSS. Dr. Ang obtained his PhD from NTU. He has a Master's of Business Studies with First Class Honours from Massey University and a Master of Science in Management of Technology from the MIT. Next, our second speaker is Mr. KK Lim from Harry Elias Partnership. KK heads the firm's Cybersecurity, Privacy and Data Protection Practice Group. He has more than 25 years of experience in technology advisory and commercial matters with a focus in representing clients and advising matters involving privacy, data protection, cybersecurity, mobile security, audit and compliance advisory. This includes technology investments, due diligence. Apart from technology law, he is also involved in the emerging fields of cyber insurance and matters relating to the digital economy, such as data governance, artificial intelligence, and blockchain. His other practice areas include employment matters such as employment disputes, work injury compensation, and trust private wealth management. Apart from cybersecurity, privacy, and data protection, The practice group has expertise in two other areas, namely in international arbitration and disputes resolution and private client advisory. At this point, to start us off, I would like to invite Dr. Ang to give his opening address for today's webinar. Please, Dr. Ang.
Thank you, Venetia. Good afternoon, my brothers and sisters. Thank you for taking this valuable afternoon time to attend our yet another webinar sessions to build capabilities in our charities. And before I start my sharing, I must take these opportunities to thank Harry Elias, particularly KK and his teams, for co-hosting these webinars, but more importantly, for developing the data protection guides free of charge. Shall we give Harry Elias and KK round of applause? My brothers and sisters, the last 8 months has been very challenging for us. And one of the things that changed the workplace tremendously is remote working. And that is working at home, or some of you all may be working at the co-working place. But working at home or remote working has its challenges. And that's why the data protection guides that we are launching today is both important and very timely. This is because working at home actually increases the risk of data. And I will frame the risk into 3 areas. First is data risk. In order for us to work remotely, data must be made available. So therefore, you will have access to data such as data on donors, data on beneficiaries. For some of you, including medical data on the beneficiary themselves. And with this easy access to data, the first risk is that the data may be compromised. The second risk is what I call the human risk. My brothers and sisters, remote working or working at home means that what is work, what is families, what is leisure sometimes get mixed together. And when you have all these 3 activities mixed together, there is an increased error of data being compromised. The third risk have to do with how data is pushed to us when we are at home. For many of us, the data are pushed to us through the internet. But you will agree that there are dangers around the internet. You can have, your system can be hacked, your system can be compromised because of the software that you use, and hence data of our beneficiaries, of our donor may put to risk. That is the reason why this data protection guides is so timely and is so important. But is this guide only applicable during COVID-19? Now, my brothers and sisters, I want to tell you that the workplace for tomorrow is going to change, and it's going to change permanently. The workplace for tomorrow will embrace a lot of remote working, such as working at home. It's going to be a permanent feature in the future. Second is that, as you know, the country are moving towards to be a smart nation. And charities and social enterprise cannot be left behind. And one very important baseline for us so that we can hop on to the smart nation journeys is data protections and data security. Let me now talk about the data protection guides that we are about to launch. I like the guides for 3 reasons. First, the guide is simple. You can go and look around in the internet and look for data protection and security guides. You will probably find manuals of easily 100 pages. But these guides that we have developed in partnership with Elias has only 15 pages. It's easy to read. The second thing I like about the guides is that the guides are written not only for big charities, but it's written for small charity and medium charity in mind too. And third, the guides are written not on a theoretical basis, but the guides are written in such a way that you can use it for execution. It's an executable guide and not a theoretical framework. My brothers and sisters, Singapore is undergoing a transformation, a digital transformation to be a smart nation. And we in the charity sectors cannot be left behind. We must continue to pursue, and securities and data protection is one of the main pillars. We will continue to organize courses for you to bring up your competencies. And on top of that, for those of y'all, which I hope many of y'all, who intend to bring your data protection and data security to a higher level in your organizations, we will walk the journey with you. Recently, I've signed another 2 new shared services, bring the number from 7 to 11. 11 shared services. And if you want to implement data protection and data security, and you don't know how, from the legal perspective, you can go to our Law SOC Pro Bono services, one of our shared services that we have signed an MOU recently, to ask for advice, free of charge. Or for some of y'all who are ambitious, who want to go and transform your services, transform your process so that you are more resilient, you can then go to another shared services known as shared services for charities. They will not only tell you what to do, but they'll hold your hands and walk through the process with you. Even though the charge is not pro bono, but they promise me that they will charge you low bono. My brother and sister, there's a big difference between corporate rates and low bono rates. Corporate rates is 100%. Community rate is 50%. Low bono rate is 20 to 30% of the cost. On top of that, you can apply for funds under our capability building funds to cover some of your 20 to 30% costs. So my brother and sisters, as long as you want to walk the journey, we will walk the journey with you so that we leave no one behind as we implement the Smart Nation in Singapore. My brothers and sisters, this probably will be the last webinar seminars that I will talk to you as COC. As the show ends and the curtain down, I bow and say thank you to all my brothers and sisters. I enjoy my last 4 years with you. We meet each other very often. Either I visited many of y'all, or we meet in many occasions. And even recently, under COVID-19, we continue to meet in the virtual world. I remember the journey we have together, particularly so when we move together from regulations to co-regulations. From I am responsible for governance to a position that we are all responsible for governance. And for that, it has paid off handsomely. Many of y'all would have read my annual reports, my last annual reports for last year. The annual report we just been released only a month ago. I'm happy to share with you. Because of the strong trust that we have created in co-regulations, donations is the highest ever. And this is because of the hard work by you, my brothers and sisters, in creating a trusted and thriving charities. I will be handing over my jobs to Desmond, which many of y'all would know, and I hope you will continue to give him your fullest support. As for me, yes, the curtain is down, but I'm moving on to a next platform. I'm now moving on to champion Singapore Care, a movement that mobilizes Singaporeans and residents so that the privileged extend a helping hand to the less privileged. The able extend a helping hand to the less able. This is the form of meritocracy that defines Singapore, that make where we are and who we are. If you like, my jobs have shifted from a MAS of giving to EDB of giving, from a regulator to a promoter. And I will continue to support the charity sectors, in addition to many other sectors in the people sectors. Therefore, it's not goodbye. It's till we meet again. Thank you, and you have a good day enjoying the conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ang, for the somber reminder of the reality of cybersecurity dangers and for introducing helpful tools and avenues for all charities to refer to help deal with the digital transformation in Singapore. Thank you as well for your leadership and contribution as the COC all these years. We look forward to your continued service and support in Singapore Cares. We now have Mr. KK Lim to give a presentation on the Data Protection Guide for Charities, where he will share more about the guide and explain how the guidelines may be implemented by charities. Please, KK.
Thank you, Valencia and Dr. Ang, and good afternoon to everyone. who just tuned in this afternoon. The journey that Dr. Ang mentioned with our firm begins about a year ago. And you know, Dr. Ang, as you all know him, is very persuasive. So it's very hard to say no to him when he approaches us. I bring greetings from Harry Elias partnership. Within the firm itself, we do put aside time for pro bono work, as mentioned. We also pleased to share with you that going forward, the Personal Data Protection Commission has, among others, appointed our firm to provide data protection services to SME. So without further ado, let me share with you the guide and the principles behind the guide. Okay, first, the agenda for this afternoon. We will first discuss the principles behind the guide, as Dr. Ang has mentioned, the key areas in the guide, the amendments to the PDPA, the Personal Data Protection Act. There are a series of major amendments that has reached Parliament for its first reading. We are awaiting for it to be passed by Parliament. We do have a summary of what we will be discussing, and then we have a conversation with the Commissioner again. There are quite a number of questions that you have submitted. We will try to cover them within the time frame that we have. Next. Now, there are quite a lot of, when we meet with charities, there's always this concept that, we are not in business. So, I don't think they are interested in us. But statistics have shown they are otherwise. For example, the UK DCMS, which is some sort of a government agency, surveyed, and there were 22% of charities in UK experienced cyber attack in 2019. Again, in Singapore context, according to the Cyber Security Agency report, we have about 16,000 phishing links now. Right? We have 21 cases of ransomware. Essentially, the hackers will lock up the computer, demand money, and 600 incidents of website defacement in 2018. And the report was in 2019. We should have a report in 2020 soon. So the concept that, we are charities, I don't think they are interested in us is actually not supportable. Next. Next slide, please. Okay, next slide. Sorry, up again. Okay. Today we will work on the focus of the guide is actually on the cybersecurity management suggestion. There are practical tips on what to do. We assume that you are compliant with PDPA. Now, just a reminder that VWOs are not excluded from the Act to protect personal data, and I have it up there. Section 24 clearly states so. There are some VWOs, professional bodies that were caught in breach of this Act recently. Next. Now, just again to recap, you will see that under the IPC, under the rule for IPC, there is a duty to ensure that the IPC keep the information confidential. Again, under the fundraising regulation, there is a duty, whether you are a charity, a commercial fundraiser, or a commercial participator or person, to ensure that the information that you've collected is kept confidential and that you need to comply the Act. And so you can see in a nutshell, the regulations governing charities or VWOs are already there, right? It's nothing new. And in fact, there is a legal obligation of charity to follow some of the rules relating to your operations. Next. Now, more about the guide. First, the guide is what we call a risk-based approach. We understand that charities, just like commercial companies, have different sizes, right? There are some small, some mid-sized, and some very large charities, for example, with hospital attached, right, are part of a very large group. The guide has been designed that whether you are very large or small, it is applicable. Number two, the guide deals with only very key areas. Like what Dr. Ang mentioned, if you go to the internet, you can see a security guide of hundreds of pages, right? And we think that's not applicable. And therefore, the guide, which has been drafted, will approach a subject in the following way. Number one, why necessary? Why you need to do this? Number two, the guide for administrator or outsourced partners. Now, I know for a fact, even in commercial company, many of our operations are outsourced. We only want to focus on the key core business. So therefore, if you are a charity that have outsourced your IT operations, do share with them the guide, because they will then know what to do. The last one is for user. The last component is for you as a user. So in a nutshell, this is how we have designed the guide. Flexible, practical, and is able to stretch from small to very large charities. Next. There are actually 4 major areas we focus on. Number one, whether you're large or small charity, you will have personal devices and removable storage. Right? You have your iPad, your notepad, your laptop, your desktop, right? And majority of us are using handphone as a computer. In your WhatsApp, you may have, I don't know, 20, 30, 50, 100 of a volunteer, right? You may have created, we know Telegram can accommodate up to 200,000. You may have different groups inside your WhatsApp, right? So in this area of devices, we are concerned with few things. How to limit the access, how to identify and authenticate who is coming in, and finally, how to authorize the user. So for example, if you run a portal where your volunteers can log in, you may want to know who is coming into your system. And you have seen the last word, 2FA, two-factor authentication, just like when you do internet banking, it's a simple way to identify who is there. And so if you have a portal where you allow them to draw down maybe your financial report, right, to your major donors, I don't know what you need to do, then you will need to ensure that the parties drawing down the information over the internet can be identified, authenticated, he or she is who he or she says to be, and you authorize. Because there's a very old saying that behind the internet, it could be a dog typing, right? Now the next one is email, another major issue. Now in email, just like in commercial operations, we are concerned about phishing. Now phishing is essentially somebody sending you a link, maybe promising you 50% discount, and just like myself, you promise me 50% discount, I will wake up and see what's out there, right? And once you click, that email will contain malicious software sitting in your system to extract information quietly from you. That's one. Second thing is on business email compromise, or we can even say charity email compromise. Now, essentially how this game is played is simply that the hacker will become an imposter to your donor, telling the donor, hey, you can click the link and send me money. But we know that the money goes to his account and not your charity's account. Right? So business email compromise is another area that whether you're in charity or whether in commercial, as long as you go around collecting money, where there's a money transaction, where there is an element of collecting money, that's where the hackers will be interested. Right? Just like the robbers will go to the banks where the money is, hackers are essentially business people. Right? They will go to where the money is too. Right? Now, the third one is website and web application. Now, in this area, I mean, unless you're a large charity, you are likely to outsource your website and your application to a third party. Here is where we have suggested certain guidelines for the third party to comply with. And these are not onerous guidelines. These are safe practices. It is just like, if you are driving and you go to your workshop to repair your car, and for any reason somebody offer you a very cheap handbrake, right? Maybe you want to change your brakes. They say, well, this one will cost 50% of the normal brakes that you need to pay. I think we need to be a bit cautious, isn't it? Because it's dealing with the brakes, it's dealing with my life, dealing with the driver's life. So similarly, if you go to a developer that tells you, hey, we don't need all these stuff, just be cautious. Just be cautious. And definitely, if you can only contact the developer over the internet, there is another, I would say, caution you need to look at. Right? I know there are many providers that are located overseas and over the internet, promising to develop things cheaply. Now, I won't comment on that, except that you just need to be careful. Right? Third, cloud services. Fourth, cloud services. Many of us are on cloud. Look for reputable cloud service provider. Again, there are many cheap cloud service provider out there. Right? A reputable one, for example, to register a domain name, maybe asking you for, say, $20, right? Or $20 per month to maintain that. The cheap one can even tell you it's only $5. Well, the old saying says that you get what you pay for, right? You get what you pay for. So generally, look for reputable cloud service provider. For very large charity, you can actually conduct an audit in relation to your systems when you connect to the cloud, right? So the one I leave it to your provider to discuss with you. So in short, the guide would cover these four, what we consider important day-to-day use of IT in relation to protecting your personal data that you've collected. Next, please. Okay, so in summary, the guide is as follows. Number one, there's a legal obligation, as I've shown you all, that the need to safekeep personal data collected from your donor, from your supporters, from your volunteers, from your beneficiary. Number two, the guide take a risk-based approach. The larger your charity, the more controls you need to have, for the simple fact that the business is large, right? And then it deals only with key areas dealing with personal data. Now, I know these four areas are very basic. There can easily be a 10 item, right, on the basic, but we have drilled it down to as basic as we can get. Right? And these are this is essentially, if you don't have these services, you can't operate. In the digital economy, and what Dr. Ang mentioned, in the smart nation journey, these are the very, very basic. Next. Now, as I mentioned, there are important amendments to the Personal Data Protection Act. And in some, there are four major policy changes. Number one, the Act demands a mandatory data breach reporting. This is to strengthen the accountability of holders of personal data. Number two, consent has been expanded. Now here is where you can use your client's data under certain conditions without consent. So the way we look at it is quite positive. For example, just as a commercial company do artificial intelligence, analytics and so forth, I don't see any reason why charities cannot try to understand their beneficiary as well as their donor. So while we can say that these are new rules, we can also say that these are new rules that you can benefit. A third, increasing data portability. This simply means that, for example, I'm with telco number one, and I say, hey, tomorrow I'm going to your competitor, telco number two. Telco number one has to transfer my data to telco number two, unless there are certain exceptions. And the fourth is that entities with more than 10 million turnover will face a penalty of 10% of the turnover. Right? So these are the four major amendments. So let me perhaps drill down to the important amendment, if I may, on mandatory data breach reporting, which will affect both commercial companies as well as charity. Next. This is just a quick snapshot of the time. So we have started like what Valencia mentioned, 2012. We are now in 2019, 2020. So those are the changes. Next. Now you see in this chart there are current and new obligations. Currently, we know there are 9 principles that you must comply with. There are changes in consent, protection, accountability, and number 7, access and correction. There are 2 new principles to add in, data portability and enforcement. And just to give you a snapshot of what are the changing principles you need to comply with. Next. Next. Okay. Now, under the new amendment, if an organization has a data breach, right, which is defined on the left-hand side of the screen, it needs to report to the regulator, number 1. Number 2, it needs to report to the clients, customers, or your donors, stroke beneficiary. So essentially, when there is a data breach going forward, you need to inform your constituency, so to speak. Now, there are rules on when to report, what to report. So generally, any loss of data that have a significant harm on the individual is reportable. Alternatively, in the amendment, in the proposal at least, any breach involving more than 500 individuals is reportable. So you have 2 situations where a breach involving the data may cause significant harm to an individual. So in that, we take it, say that you have a list of 20 donors, the top 20 donors of the organization, and for some reason, their data has been stolen, leaked, or accidentally lost. I believe you need to report because they involve, say, their home address, it involve their credit card number where they constantly give you money every month, right? Or they involve their email, right? So if you put the email and their credit card number and their NRIC or name, wow, the hacker can actually do a lot of damage because he can create a lot of fake requests masquerading the charity, right? So those are very significant issues that you need to report. then you can have next. Right? This is where it is mentioned. Now, the type of information that's lost will come out in the regulation later. So for NRIC, definitely would likely to be there. Health information, other information that they consider as potentially able to cause significant harm to an individual will be released in the regulation. So there's one part that we are awaiting for the regulation. Next. Right. Now, outsource partner. What happens if your outsource provider has lost your data? They also must report into you without undue delay. For yourself, the main organization or the principal organization, once you have detected a loss and you need to report in, the proposed rules is 72 hours after your assessment. And so therefore, going forward, BWOs need to be able to assess a breach that happened in your system within 72 hours, report into the regulator and inform your donor base or your beneficiary base, unless there's a reason not to inform them. Now, this kicks in a lot of processes. This kicks in a lot of advisory that you need to take. So going forward, in managing data protection, it is no longer an IT responsibility. It is your IT and your lawyers, because the notifiable breach is a legal requirement. There's a legal threshold to reach, so to speak. And so therefore, your IT and legal team has to work very closely to say, hey, whether this incident needs to report or this incident we need not report. And if you conclude that you need not report, with the approval of the board, you then need to defend the decision why you don't report. Right? So that's one area. And so therefore, going forward, you need to work very closely with them. Then the other area is, of course, insurance, cyber insurance. How do you manage it? Right? So this new set of amendment that comes in requires multiple expertise. And the last one would include communication. Because imagine that you are a donor and you receive a notice saying, hey, we are sorry, but you know, there's a breach. How would the donor react? So in a nutshell, the mandatory data breach reporting requires 3 sets of experts. Number one, the IT provider, your internal IT team, your lawyers, and your PR team. Now, an additional point to that is this. What happens if you lose your data in a thumb drive, or the person, you know, lose a handphone that contains information? You also need to report in if there's a physical loss of devices. Before the amendment, there were no, this requirement wasn't very explicit. After this, the new amendment coming in will be very clear. Any loss of storage devices containing personal data that may pose significant harm to the person involved need to be reported in. So it kicks in a situation where you need to ensure that the devices that carry massive information, you know, our mobile phone are actually little computers we carry in our pocket, needs to be carefully managed. There are technical solutions on managing lost devices and so forth. That's a separate matter, but that's something I need to bring to your attention. Next. There is also a component where a party that what we call egregiously has mishandled personal data, reckless and so forth, new provisions on penalties will be imposed on those individuals. Next. So in a nutshell, for the mandatory data breach reporting, we ask the questions with our clients. Number one, what has happened? Number two, who to report? Number three, when to report? Number 4, what do we do after reporting? Because once you report, there's a lot of cleanup work you need to do. And then we will also with the client, what is a reportable incident and how to deal with the process of reporting the procedure first to the board, all the way to your board of directors, and then to the regulators. There is a process that we need to, that we work with our clients. Next. Right. So now we have reached the answer and question, the question answer session. I'd like to invite Commissioner back to the discussion. And there are some questions that have been sent to us. We'll try to cover them, and then we'll cover some of the questions that's, I think is popping on the Q&A chat box. Right. So can I invite Dr. Ang back?
KK, I'm back. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Ang. Yeah. So maybe I can, we have received some questions, and maybe I can read very quickly some of these questions, and then Dr. Ang and myself will then try to answer them. Right? Now, among the many questions, the first question was asked regarding the use of NRIC, when to use and when not to use to collect, whether you can keep copies of NRIC in Dropbox and so on and so forth. So let me try to answer the question, and then if Dr. Ang, please jump in any time after this. Now, essentially in collection of NRIC, the suggestion we have is that NRIC and copies of NRIC are collected when we have a high fidelity situation, right? So that's the guideline given by the Commission. Now, what do you mean by that? Now, if I were to go and collect, say I have a grandchildren, for example, I turn up at the childcare center, say I want to collect ABC. Now, the childcare center, the school teacher absolutely has the right to demand to see my IC, isn't it? Because this is a situation of high fidelity, where you know, kidnapping can be involved, you know, and we are dealing with children. Right? So these are situations where the Commission says that you can collect the NRIC only in a high fidelity situation. And if not, the suggestion is really get the IC to identify, and then collect the last 3 digits with the alphabet numbers and their mobile number if you want to. So this is generally the principle of collecting NRIC. Now I know that some of you may ask me immediate question, what happens if you want to come into my premise? Can I demand to hold your IC, to make photocopy? And the suggestion, the guideline given is no, even if it's entering your premise, because it's not in a really high fidelity situation, right? It doesn't call for that. So I want to pause here in case Dr. Ang, you have any comment on that?
Thank you, KK. I think the Act make it very clear. NRIC numbers are very personal to a person. And the Acts also say that if you need to keep numbers, you take the last 3 digits with the alphabet, and that's it. And what many charities are doing now, maybe I can share some of the best practice. So you will ask a question, oh dear, without NRIC, how do I identify my donors? How do I identify my beneficiaries? Well, for some of y'all, I understand that you issue your own unique identifier number. You have a process whereby you will issue your own number to identify your customer, in this case, the beneficiaries or your donor. But take note of the Act. The Act said very clear. Henceforth, you cannot keep people NRIC number. Worse, cannot go and share people NRIC number. That's not allowed anymore. Okay, so I just want to share with you what the Act will require. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ang. The next question is penalty for charity. And essentially the question is saying that charity, when caught, would you have a lower penalty? So far, we don't see any distinction there. The penalties out there over the last 40 cases for last year, or sorry, the year before, 40 cases, is between $5,000 to $25,000 fine plus a lot of requirement to clean up the system. So the question, is there a lower penalty for charity? Not that we know of under the Act.
I just want to add is that, you know, if you want to know, I mean, my brothers and sisters, we in the charity sectors are not, I always say we are the trustees. People share information with us, people give us money so that we can pass it down to the beneficiaries. Therefore, as a trustees, we have a greater responsibility as a stewards. I can tell you what is the issue. It's not about punishment. I mean, yes, you know, the person who share the information maliciously will be punished. But I can tell you this will erode the entire trust of the charities. My brother and sisters, trust is difficult to build, but it's very easy to erode. So one is eroded, everybody will be involved. Everybody will be affected. That is the reason why we should take it seriously, just not because it's a penalty, because it affects all of us. Thank you.
Okay, the next question is whether, and this question will be asked a few different formats, right? Number one, whether you can share a personal data with your church members or with a ancillary organization and so forth. Now, essentially, I know that some charities are run by churches, some Buddhist temples and so forth, but they are actually an arm of the temple of the church, right? But they are related. And whether you can share information between organizations, the answer is important to get this right in the collection process. Because in the collection form, in the way you collect, you have to let them know that the personal data would be shared with another body or party or church members or Buddhist members of the Buddhist temple and so on and so forth. Now, if the collection policy is not correctly drawn up in the first place, then the answer is no. Because you have to get the consent, the general principle of getting consent for use, disclosure of their information. Right? So I hope I answered that question. So you can have different configuration, but the collection policy is the key to manage this. So let me pause here and see whether Dr. Ang has any question, anything to add on.
My brother and sisters, I want to bring you back to a fundamental. I mean, even you receive consents, but you use the consents wrongly, it's still against the law. So consent is not a panacea to everything. You must understand 3 words under our Data Protection Act. The first words, as what KK has said, is do you have the consent of the person whom the data belong to? The second words is, when I give you the consent, I give you the consent with a purpose. Did you use it for the right purpose or not? It doesn't mean to say that I give you the data, I consent to give you the data, and you use it for, you know, I give you for purpose A and you use it for purpose B. Good example is, I give you a consent regarding to my data because I want to make donation to you. Instead, you use my data and you sell it to companies who then want to sell product to me. Clear cut, this is not the purpose. Third is what I call reasonableness. Is it reasonable? I mean, do you ask the information because it's reasonable to ask for the information? I give you an example. When someone wants to give you donations, right? You know what you do? You ask for particulars about the family, the extended family, the extended family. Is it appropriate? Is it reasonable? So if there's 3 words I want you to think when you want to ask this question, is consent, which is important, purpose, and reasonableness. And you want to read more about this, you should go to the Data Protection Commissions under their websites. They have very good write-up regarding to these 3 words. Thank you.
And if I just may add on to what Dr. Ang has mentioned in terms of raising money for charity, I know some of you do engage professional fundraiser. Just a reminder that you need to have a proper contract with these commercial companies that are involved, or even non-commercial company, because you are handing over data of your constituent to them, and they have you need to impose, if I may say, very strict control on what they are using it for. To contact your donor, yes. To sell things to your donor, of course, no. To even come up with new services for your donor, even if within the charity ambit, the answer is likely no, because the purpose that what Dr. Ang mentioned is very critical. So it all boils back to the consent policy and forms, that when you first encounter a donor or you first encounter a beneficiary, you have to get that right. And in the commercial world, we spend a lot of energy with our client to make sure we know their business processes well, what they are exactly going to do, even before we construct the first page of the policy. Right? And we spend a lot of time understanding their business process. So if you are engaging any provider to advise you on data protection, a trick question, if I may suggest, is you ask them, would you be understanding our business process, right? And just don't look at the price that they're going to provide. Did they tell you that I'm going to spend time to look at your business process? Did they say that we want to look at how your data actually flow in your organization? Right? These are key questions that a good provider will ask you, right? And not just to do a quick and dirty job, so to speak. Right? Now, relating to fund collection, there is a question of online fundraising, and that really, my suggestion to that question that's raised is really, you need to have a proper contractual obligation with on your online portal, that before the donor click OK, what are the obligations you need to impose on him, and what are his rights and so forth. So that one you need to look at it carefully on online fundraising. And there is a related question on fund again, whether there are grants for charity for PDPA implementation. I would like to leave that question to Dr. Ang.
My brothers and sisters, I fully agree with KK, and that is that in your contracts with your commercial fundraiser, you should make sure that it's not only about the contract of money coming to you, but in the contract, it must also mention about the data. Because frankly speaking, the data belong to you. Why? It's very simple. Can you imagine that I'm a donor? I donate to you as a charity, but I donate to you through your appointed fundraiser. What do you minimally as a charity need to do? Minimally, you should write a letter to thank me, right? And if you do not have my particular, how do you going to thank me for me making donations? My brother and sister is serious, you know. Please remember, sometimes we must not forget to show gratitude. The other reason why you need data from your commercial fundraiser is that, is writing a letter of thanks enough? No. Ideally, you should write a letter of impact, i.e., when the money is given to you, you have made a difference. At the end of the day, write to the donor about what difference have you made. That can only happen provided you have the data. So please make sure that when you sign your contracts with the commercial fundraiser, do not only cover money matters, but also cover data matters, and make sure that the data is transferred to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ang. There's one more question that was sent in. It's talking about recording information. Can you record the discussion between your client and yourself, and whether PDPA covers this. I think the issue of recording information is really, you need to get the permission, regardless of the act, you need to get the permission of the client first when you want to record a conversation, or you may be accused of being unethical in recording conversations secretly. Now, if you want to record a conversation for the purpose of clarity, I suggest that first you need to let them know, and I think unless it's absolutely necessary, perhaps you can write a summary note of your meeting, just the very key points, and send to your client and say, we have discussed this, please let me know if I record it wrongly. So I think the issue of recording a live conversation may potentially give you more trouble than it's worth it. In particular, the security of that piece of conversation that you need to handle. So that's my suggestion in relation to that question. And then we can then move into the Q&A where the time permit. Quite a lot of questions there. So Dr. An, any comments to the last question on recording information?
My brother and sister, I cannot understand. Why on earth do you want to secretly record conversation with your donor or your beneficiaries? This clearly tells me that you are saying that there's no trust. Remember, under our code of governance, a very important word is disclosure and transparency. Unless you are saying that you have a dispute with your beneficiaries and you want that dispute evidence to be tendered. Even with that, you mean you have to resort to secret recording? I really urge charities, particularly charities, we are doing good, you know. Therefore, doing good means ethics is important. I find secret recording, I cannot think of a reason why charities should be involved in secret recording, to tell the truth.
Thank you, Dr. Ang. Dr. Ang, can we take a look at the Q&A box, which I hope you can see also, and some of the questions that have been coming through this. I think we have about 15 minutes more or so. So Dr. Ang, would you take a look and then see what the question that you want to answer, and then we can go to that?
Hi, KK. Maybe I'll just step in at the moment to post you some of the questions.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
We have quite a few questions on NRIC collection and retention obligations. Maybe I'll just list to you some of the questions posed by the attendees today. So one of them asked, for membership into any association or organization, one of the requirements is for the applicant to present his or her NRIC card or provide the number. Should this practice be terminated since NRIC details are very personal?
Okay, I think my suggestion is this. When we collect NRIC, what is really the purpose? You want to identify the person, right? Isn't it? You want to identify the person. Now, when you collect the whole NRIC, and you cannot decide what to collect, what not to collect, they come in a piece, right? And you got to photocopy and keep it. It poses a lot of responsibility on your part, right? So essentially, when you talk about membership, identification is the name, right? You take the last 3 digits of his or her NRIC, right? The alphabet. You take the mobile number. You take the home address, and I think that's all you need to confidently identify a person. Of course, the person can show you the NRIC just to clarify, just to show that the data given is true. But to go and photocopy and keep it, I think you may have a problem. Now, there's a related question of saying that means test, right? You want to have the certainty or mean test whether this is the person that deserve the money under the whatever scheme. I think that issue we need to work with those that are providing those services and get their agreement that in the light of the law and the advisory provided by the Commission, the Personal Data Protection Commission, you can only provide certain information. Say last 3-digit alphabet of his NRIC. You can't collect the whole thing, right? So I think you need to work backwards with them, and I think that is where it is. I know there is this deep desire for certainty. So you want to photocopy back and front and all that. Unless it is for a very is for a situation where you really need to identify that person in financial transaction and so forth, or the incident, the example I've given, I don't think you should go and collect the full NRIC. I know there's a great desire, but you know, the law is quite clear on that.
Okay,
So,
okay. So,
any question? Any comments?
I agree with you. I think, yes, I agree. We should take more questions maybe. Vanisha is.
Yeah, there's a practical point raised by the participants. They want to know that if they have already collected these NRIC information, would they then need to now dispose of the information? Or can they just ensure that they keep this information securely within the organization system?
Okay, I'm not sure what Dr. Ang has in mind, but my suggestion is more of operation, right? My suggestion is this: if you collect the information electronically, right, that means through your portal and so forth, make sure it's encrypted, right? Make sure it's encrypted. Speak to your IT provider, encrypt it to the good standard. Of course, make sure you don't lose the password. Please don't use, in a sense, those free encryption that is offered to you on the internet. Be careful, because free encryption may have its own problem. There are 1 or 2 free provider you can use, but I'll leave it to your IT to discuss with you, and you can send email to me later if you want. There are only 1 or 2 genuinely free encryption, but generally please buy a paid one. That's one. Number 2, if you say you have collected your photocopy over the last 5 years, one huge bunch of NIC copies of them, make sure you go through the process of digitizing it. I think there are some funding, if I'm not wrong, digitization. And if you don't digitize it, if you don't need it, please discard it. And please don't give to the Karanguni that you have. The NRIC, please shred it. Because there are many cases where the given to Karanguni is found under the tree. There are real cases, right? So anything on that, please get a reasonable shredder and just shred, and not to dispose it through that method. Dr. Ang?
My brother and sisters, does 2 wrong make 1 right? No. 2 wrong does not make 1 right. The law is very clear. Say that, look, you should not keep NRIC. I know that we have some, if you look at the law very carefully, there's some leeway to handle records that you already have. But you think about it, if you have partial records on NRIC, and the other partial record is on whatever identifier you are creating, you got a problem of searching, right? You got a problem. One is to search NRIC, the other one is to search your own ID number. You need to decide. And therefore, from the system perspective, you want to have a universal set of search. Therefore, if you believe in that, the answer is very simple. Since you cannot collect new data on NRIC, you have to convert all to your new identifier. The other advantage of doing that, as what KK had alluded, is that you remove the risk of accidental disclosure. So my brother and sister, think it not only from the legal perspective, 2 wrong does not make 1 right, but think it from the perspective of efficiency and effectiveness of your systems.
Thanks, KK and Dr. Ang. So there's actually another aspect of NRIC questions. Typically, NRIC information of donors are required for tax-deductible donations. So can organizations request for donors' IC at their online donation page? And if this organization shouldn't retain full NRIC records, then how should the organization provide IRA such details for tax deduction purposes?
I think, Dr. An, that in relation to IRAs, I'm not sure whether you have an understanding with IRAs on this point. in terms of policy operation?
It doesn't say, again, go back to your PDPA. The PDPA actually gives authority to some people to keep NRIC. For example, the government who are necessarily providing services, just like our taxation department. I mean, clearly I can tell you that taxation department can keep your NRIC, right? Or our ICA, because they are the one who issue NRIC number, by the way. You say cannot keep NRIC number, something wrong, right? Or the police who need it so that we make sure this place is safe and secure. The question is, sometimes we interface with these government departments. And some of these government departments require NRIC for what I call verification of a person. My advice to you is this. Is one thing that you pass information to the necessary authority for a valid purpose. But then my question to you is, what do you do with the information after that? For some of us, we still keep information, happy keep, you know. Actually, the law said very clear, you cannot keep, you know. Okay? So, does that answer your questions? It doesn't mean to say that you cannot ask and pass on to a legitimate entity, legal entity that can keep. But because it passed through you, it doesn't mean that you can keep, okay? Two wrong does not make one right. I hope that make it clear. If you're still not clear, and my brother and sister, I know there's a lot of issue on NRIC. I'm very happy. I'm not the lawyer, but I have set up a shared services for you to ask all these type of questions with legal backing. Please go to my shared services. Please go to Law Society Pro Bono Services. They will answer your questions free of charge. Please go. Okay, my brother and sister? Because there are many other questions I think you should go and clarify. I'm not a lawyer. I must tell you that I'm a public servant. But I think a better answer for you to get is a lawyer. Because the next question you should ask is, if I cannot get, how? How long can, even you should ask, even if I cannot keep, but I need to pass it to a legal entity that's allowed to have access, how long can I keep? How can I pass? What is my accountability? You see, one question like that can have 10,000 follow-up questions. Please go and see my free lawyer. Thank you.
Thanks.
On the question of keeping, I just want to share the position of the law is that you can keep information as long as for a legitimate business or legal reason. So for example, some of you mentioned about childcare MSF. I think you definitely can keep the IC for that purpose of giving to the other side of the authority. But as what Dr. Ang has mentioned, once you have passed over, there's no reason for you to continue to keep that. And the suggestion is that once the job is done, you should destroy them in case they are leaked out or they are stolen, especially electronically, which you definitely need to get it encrypted and not to just keep in plain Excel spreadsheet. I know that this habit of keeping information on Excel spreadsheet, especially IC number, phone number, and so forth, very useful. Excel is very useful, but please get it encrypted and please make sure that the password is not pasted on the computer desktop, so that anybody can go and take a look, take a photo of your password. Among your trusted staff, only make sure you know who you give the password to the encrypted document. Thank you.
Okay, thanks KK and thanks Dr. Ang for your explanations. We'll move on to a different category of questions in respect of this webinar. We will focus specifically on the PDPA. And some questions include, for example, have the amendments, proposed amendments to the PDPA been made effective? And if so, when? I think, KK, this is a question for you to respond to.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa. The amendment has reached Parliament for first reading. The first reading has been done. We are not sure when it will be passed by Parliament and assented by the President, but generally we think that it's likely within this quarter, if not next quarter. The reason for that is the amendment for this is not really new, because in 2019, in July, our law firm was really invited by Commissioner to launch it through the Singapore Business Federation on managing data breach. A guideline was released in 2019. So there has been given a year notice, and we think that it should be either this quarter or next quarter.
Thanks, KK. So some of our attendees are pretty interested in what to do in respect of these proposed amendments. So for example, they would like to know more about the mandatory data breach reporting obligation. So what if the organization suspects that there might be a data breach, but it is still undergoing an investigation which may take more than 3 days? Should the organization still report this suspected breach in case first?
Okay, under the report, the proposed amendment, again, I say proposed because we're not sure what Parliament may finally pass the form. Now, essentially, what is simply say is this. Number one, if your IT inform you there is a data breach involving personal data, and together with your lawyers, you decide there's a breach, the time is 72 hours from date of assessment, right? So yes, you are correct. The assessment may take 3 days, 4 days, even a week, right? But I think it's reasonable. Say that you discover the breach on Monday, and I would suggest it's reasonable to say that Wednesday or Thursday you need to report in. You still fulfill the 3 days from their assessment. The final assessment says it's 3 days, right? But it would likely to be unreasonable to say that you take 2 weeks to assess. Right? And then you report after that. Now, don't forget that within the 2 weeks of assessment, the hacker may actually post the information on the internet demanding money, right? And then even before you report, the regulators may know that there's a breach, and then the question will be, how come you take 2 weeks to report? You know, so it goes back to another issue when under the new rules that are going to be passed, the ability to assess the breach, right, it's quite important. Right? You know, you take some time, yes, but it can't be 2-3 weeks. Then you come to a conclusion that I think it's a reportable breach. You got to justify that. They are quite clear. Commission is quite clear that if you take a long time to justify, to report, then you justify how come your assessment period is long, right? Is way too long, because the impact on your within 2 weeks, definitely the impact may be on your constituent. Somebody may be sending them fake email from the data they collected to trick them to, you know, for all sorts of reasons. So I hope that give you, you know, some practical guidelines on that.
Thanks for the clarification. There are also questions on what the retention limitation obligation is. Does PDPA specify any period for personal data retention? And specifically, are there any time limits for the retention of personal data of donors or volunteers who have become inactive?
Okay, there are two issues there. Number one, the retention under the rule is for business or legal reason. That's one general principle. So generally, the answer is that once you finish the business with that data, well, you did not retain. Now, there are some profession or sectoral requirement, and this sectoral requirement, I need to refer back to Dr. Ang. So, for example, if you are dealing with tax matters, usually the thing is retained for 7 years. For solicitors in property transactions, there's a period given. And so there is a sectoral requirement. So if you are dealing with sectoral requirement, please refer to the pro bono lawyers. What sector are you talking about that may have its own retention requirement period? And if not, the general principle is that once you don't use it for your purpose, please destroy them. So I'm not sure in charity there are specific sectoral requirement from the charity sector. That one I need to bring back to Dr. Ang.
KK, indeed, if you recall earlier, I shared with you and share with everyone 3 words, and that is consent, purpose, and reasonableness. These 3 concepts is equally applicable to data. reasonableness is important. No? It does not mean to say that immediately I hand over the information to a legal entity that is supposed to receive. I must get somebody on standby with a button pressed immediately. Hey, this is not reasonable, especially when you are charity. If you are able to do that, means you got a lot of manpower. If you got a lot of manpower, then I will ask you why. Why is not the manpower used to service the beneficiary, then sit on the desk waiting to press that one button? Okay? I want to have balance. I don't want you all to overreact. Please don't overreact. That's why the law is written in such a way that reasonable time. For example, if under my systems, it's a reasonable time that I do a data refresh, and it's a reasonable time. Reasonableness does not mean to say I take 10 years then do a data refresh. So as to what is that level of reasonableness in charity, I will put it to you, is that in the charity sectors, our clock is not as fast as that of a corporate sectors. I'm telling you the truth, because if I swing the clock too fast, then it's going to be overburden the charity. I'm not going to overburden the charity, but the charity cannot say bo chap either. I have people who have record inside there for 10 years, and they tell me that, oh, I'm still cleaning my record. After 10 years, you're still cleaning a record? Cannot be what. Right? So I don't want to lock you in, but you know that I'm balancing between legal requirement and overburden the charity. Okay, brother and sister, I hope you got a hint.
Thanks, Dr. Ang, and thank you, KK. So there is also another question in regards to good practices for charities. Would it be good practice to incorporate the PDPA procedures into an organization's operational SOPs, or is it okay to have a separate PDPA guidelines document?
Oh, this one I kiss you, I want to answer. This one you give to KK also, I want to answer.
Please, Dr. Ang.
Yeah. My brother and sisters, if you have a separate SOP on PDPA, it's good. But I think better is that the PDPA policy must be infused into your day-to-day SOPs. Because it's your day-to-day SOPs that deal with the data, collect data, store data, disseminate data, make use of data. So I will expect as a start, you should have a dedicated SOP on PDPA, so that you know what is PDPA is all about. Phase 1. Phase 2, you must make sure then the PDPA requirements are pervasive into the other SOPs. Therefore, your PDPA activities have shifted from what I call doing to checking. So you have shifted your original PDPA to audit already. Initially, it's for execution, but then once you infuse into your organizational SOP, then your PDPA focus on audit, making sure that it indeed is executed on the ground. If you like, my brother and sister, there are 3 steps in making sure this PDPA are carried out. First step, number 1, you need to appoint somebody who is responsible for it. You know, for charities, I really, even small charities, you may think that, oh, but it need not to be a full-time. Appoint somebody who is responsible for PDPA, understand what is PDPA. That's why we want you all to attend these type of seminars. What you mean by consent, purpose, and reasonableness. Formulate the policies. So you have one person eyeball on this. Second is you need to then have what I call a take a stock check of all your data. My brother and sister, when you do a stock check, you will be surprised at what type of skeleton can fall from your corsets. Do a stock check. Do a stock check on what are the data you have, but also have a data policy. Earlier we asked, right, Information must have expiry date. Of course, you're going to keep people NRIC forever. Even you keep forever, the person pass on. You mean the person pass on, you still want to ask for donation? He may give you a different currency lah. Maybe, I don't know. But cannot be right. But do you know the problem of writing to a family with someone who passed on and asked for donation? My brother and sister, it shows that we're not sensitive. Right? So that's why you need to have what I call a data policy. What are the data that you want to keep? What are data that's important? Brother and sister, not all data are same equal important. You don't go and put a security cap on all your data and then come to me as Commissioner of Charity. I need what? $1 million for my data protection system. Then I look at you and say, huh? Cannot be right. So you know which data are important, which data are critical, which data are not important, what are the expiry. They have all this cleared up. And then the stage 3 has SOPs. SOP on collection, dissemination, usage of data. And this one is not so simple. Huh? And I will tell you, right, if you are not sure, if you don't know what to do, please go to my shared services for charities. They will do it for you at a very low bono rate. You go to corporate, you pay a lot, low bono rate. Okay? Low bono rate. And then after that, you can apply to me for capability building fund. Cheap, good. So that I can subsidize some of your capability building. In charity, we must work like that. Okay, my brothers and sisters. So I have shared with you the 3 steps. Remember the 3 steps. So, Venetia, sorry, it's a long topic, but this is the area that affect my heart.
No worries.
Thank you.
Thank you for the helpful tips and recommendations. Earlier on, you pointed out something very important, which is to ensure that there's someone within the charity organization who is responsible for making sure that the PDPA is being complied with. So we do have a question specifically on smaller charities. The question is, if there's only one employee that's working full-time for that organization and the rest of the board members are all on a volunteer basis, must that one employee be the designated data protection officer of the organization?
You know, small charities, first and foremost, if you are small charities, I expect the single one person to be multitasking. He's both the general manager, the admin manager, the HR manager, the operation manager, and whatnot, all add all together. But my question to you, my brother and sister, why are we fixated with permanent staff? You mean the data protection officer cannot be a volunteer? Cannot. I have some volunteer who work even more than the permanent staff. I can tell you that. So to answer your question, first conclusion to the question is we cannot always think of the what I call fixated with fixed costs. I always tell you, right, asset light, program heavy. What do you mean by asset light, program heavy? Leverage on volunteers. In fact, do you know that if you push me a little bit harder, I may even have shared services for data protection in future, you know. I almost have that. Remember, I set out a charity, a shared services, I Shine crowds. I Shine provide you technological solutions. Including in the technological solutions is the protection of your IT assets. Nothing stretch that to also protect your data and therefore have a consistent data policy. So in another word to say, all you need to do is go to the single source of shared services. And that shared services not only serve you as one charity. I built once, I use many times. You see, this is another concept of cheap and good. Why build once and use once, where I can build once and use many times? You mean data protection is different from different organizations? I can tell you the backbone is the same. The 3 words is the same. Consent, purpose, and reasonable is the same. Right? So to answer your questions for small charities, please don't see this as a limit. See this as a possibility. But most important, know why are you doing it. You are doing it because if you don't, it will erode the trust. And if you erode trust, trust is difficult to build, easy to erode, and trust erosion will affect all of us. We are in the business of trust. Okay? I hope I make it very clear.
Thank you, Dr. Ang.
Just to add on to one or 2 points there. Now, in fact, just to echo Dr. Ang, the law itself says that the operation of the PDPA is based on reasonable expectation. So as long as what is reasonable is actually encoded in the law, the way you approach it. On the DPO thing, the law requires a DPO, but it does not say that you cannot be outsourced, what Dr. Ang has mentioned, to a volunteer or outsourced to a professional service. So I hope that brings some clarity there.
Yes, thank you, KK, as well as Dr. Ang. We have reached 4:30, which is supposed to be the end of our webinar, but we do still have some interesting questions. If all of you are amenable, we could extend this session for about 10 minutes to address some of the burning questions raised by the participants. Would you be okay for this?
Venetia, I'm okay, but can you alert all my brothers and sisters, because I respect their appointment. So if they leave now, I won't get angry. So if you have an appointment, please proceed. But for the rest of y'all who want to have a chit chat, I'm most happy to chit chat with you until the cow comes down. Right? Yeah.
Yes, sure.
My last webinar, remember.
Yes, we all like to spend as much time with you as possible right now. Okay, so let me just raise another question, interesting question. So this is in the church context, and in fact for the context of many other religious organizations. So there are often many instances where members of the organization would like to contact another member for various reasons. For example, maybe to bless them with surprise food deliveries or gifts, especially during this COVID period. So is it okay for a member to ask the organization's office for the contact details of another member, and will the organization be permitted to disclose such information to members?
I think, okay, I think for this question, this is a very practical issue that churches and so forth face about circulating contacts of members to other members for a legitimate purpose. Now, I think the first thing is that you need to get the consent. Again, it goes back to the consent position. The first time when you have members joining you, people joining you, if you say that the church case, for example, you'll be around for 20, 30 years, right? Now, I think it's important that you do a one-time consent. Well, what we meant by that is that sit down with your provider, let them go through your business process, say the next 3 to 5 years, what are the major things you want to do, what are the current things that you need to do, and do a one-time consent among all your members, including the ability to circulate the members' information to another party when requested, right? Do that. Of course, in the actual implementation, if member A comes to you and say that can I have member B information, I think within your operating procedure, you will then need to write to member B and say, hey, member A is asking, are you okay to release the information? The reason is this year, when you do a one-time consent, everybody may say yes, right? 2021, they may have a quarrel between A and B. We don't know, right? We really don't know, or misunderstanding or whatever. So when A asks for information, I think it's part of the SOP. You need to ask B, hey, there's a request, can you forward? And suggestion just not to forward per request, although they're given the general consent in the first place. So I think I hope you can use those suggestions. Thanks.
I want to echo what KK have said, and I thought that is very wise. The last thing you want, my brother and sister, is to make our beneficiary sign stack of consent form. Then the beneficiary say, I don't know what am I signing away. Please remember, at the end of the day, what are we doing? At the end of the day, we are here to serve the beneficiaries and not to create inconvenience for them. A good example, a very good example. is that I have someone who are discharged from the hospital, say for heart attack. And for him to go home, I have one charity that provide medical escort. So from hospital to home. Then I got another charities who provide what I call food, lunch and dinner. Yet I got another charity because today mental health is a big problem. Because once you suffer from heart attack, it's very stressful. So mental health and physical health charity come to you and help you for home therapy or home rehabilitation. That's a very nice choice of words. Yet you got another charities who want to make sure that my uncle and auntie also go out to Kai Kai instead of only staying at home. Bring them out to Garden by the Bay, bring them out to the beach. Yet I got another charity who bring them to make sure that they do exercise so that they have good health. Can you imagine now? All these charity come independently with their stack of form, and then my uncle and auntie really don't know what to do with it. But if the consent can be coordinated, a single consent, charity all come together, so that putting what I call the beneficiary in the center, and then one consent for the entire what I call pathway. The doctor like to use this as medical pathway. Then I think my uncle and auntie will be very grateful. I like to see this from the service point of view and putting my uncle and auntie in the center back again. I hope PDPA is not pushing you to be you as a center of gravity. The center of gravity must be my uncle and auntie. I hope that is clear. Thank you.
Just to add on, in a well-drafted consent form is essentially only one page. That we want to, and this is after going through the exercise with your provider on your business processes and actually your business objective, if I use the word, or your charitable causes that you are looking at, and what are the downstream services like what Dr. Ang mentioned. So a good consent is one page and in very clear writing, that's all to it. Yeah. But to say that, to make a clear consent is actually not an easy job.
Okay, thank you, KK and Dr. Ang, for your clarifications. Perhaps I will just raise one last question before we conclude today's Q&A seminar session and today's webinar. So this last question relates to the use of third-party and external outsourced vendors and suppliers. So if an organization is using an overseas or third-party supplier for its donors management system or to manage data or things like membership portal, students portal, as well as other services, does the organization need to inform its stakeholders of this? And in terms of the relationship between the organization and the third-party vendor, is it okay to just have like a non-disclosure form to ensure that that vendor is obliged to maintain the protection of such important personal data?
Okay, in relation to third-party vendor, it is more than just saying that they will keep your data safely. Under the mandatory data breach, they need to report in. They need to follow your process. So essentially just a commercial firm, if I can use an example, where third party is involved, we first request that they comply with the act. We also require that they comply with your organization data protection policy. And what Dr. Ang mentioned, you need to have a proper policy so that the third party can see what it's all about. And the third thing is that the transfer of data is very critical. So then why you need to work with IT and your lawyers to see exactly what data has been transferred and whether it is encrypted and whether this data have been transferred out of Singapore. Because the transfer of their personal data out of Singapore is generally prohibited, right? So these are some of the issues you need to look at, including, say that the charity for some reason is caught and then the charity is unfortunately charged. Those indemnity by a third party, and sometimes it's caught by a third party provider, right? It's actually not your fault. All those things need to work out properly in the contract.
Yes, KK. So apart from that, one outstanding part to the question would be, would it be necessary for the organization to inform the donor of such an arrangement being made?
The answer is yes, because you need to let the person who give you information know that their information is being provided to a third party for processing, for marketing, for raising fund, and so on and so forth. So it goes back to the question that the charity needs to, you need to sit down with your consultant to go through your business process carefully.
My brother and sister, I know that I've been pushing very hard for do what you do best and outsource the rest. Right? But when you outsource the rest, doesn't mean to say you outsource responsibility. In fact, it doesn't really matter whether you do it or your service provider do it, because you are still accountable. Because if you outsource to a service provider, but you did not ensure the service provider do what according to your data policy, and if there is a breach, guess what? Are you going to tell the PDPA council, oh, it's not my fault, it's the service provider fault? I can tell you, they will equally go after you, because you know why? You cannot outsource responsibility. They're going to ask you, what have you done to ensure that the service provider do what you say in your service policy? Did you check? How often did you check? Do you have a service agreement? Is your service agreement in accordance to your three things? What is the three things? Consent, purpose, reasonableness. So my main message to you is, my brother and sister, you outsource, but you cannot outsource responsibility. So I agree with KK. For good governance, you should alert the donors. You should alert people where information has been outsourced for processing, so that people know what are they in for. That's for good governance. For good governance. That's all I have, Venetia.
Thank you, Dr. Ang. Thank you, KK, for the very helpful guidance and pointers. So with that, we will wrap up the Q&A session for today. There are still many burning questions that have yet to be answered, but Dr. Ang, you have very helpfully also pointed us to the direction of your shared services portal and also many other avenues that the organizations can request for help and assistance on a no bono basis. So for all of you out there who are still interested and need to find out more, please reach out to either all these services, or you can also contact KK with his contact details reflected earlier right here. Right. So with that, I'd just like to add a short note. Some of you have been asking about the data protection guide mentioned by Dr. Ang and shared a little bit more by KK earlier. Please note that this guide will be made available on the Charities portal by the end of this month. And the recording for this webinar will also be made available to all of you through MCCY after the session.
Venetia, can I jump in?
Sure.
I thought Kelly has spoken to you. Can you please send out a copy of your guides to all participants today?
Sure, that should not be a problem.
Yes, send it to them. I got no problem with that. It's just that the better looking, because we package it nicely so that it's easier to read. That one you download for my charity portal probably next week or the week after. I'm targeting for next week.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
But please give them the guide today, because so that they can then look at it and remember my brother and sister, the content is exactly the same. What I've done is I package the guides so that it look nicer, so that it's easier to read. That's all. But the content is exactly the same. So please download a copy of the guide today.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ang, for this. Okay,
Yeah.
we have now come to the end of today's program. We have heard a lot of valuable thoughts and sharing from our two distinguished speakers today, and also many important points and questions were raised and addressed. We hope that all of you here have had a fruitful and meaningful time with us as well. Thank you very much to both Dr. Ang and KK for your insightful.
Yes, Valencia, if I can just add in, we are actually quite privileged to be approached by Dr. Ang to help to assist in development of the guide. So to all the charity out there, it's our privilege to be able to do that. It's also in a sense, it's part of our firm's philosophy to contribute back to the society where we can. So the other thing I want to thank is Dr. Ang for sharing his last webinar with us. It's again our privilege, and we are very sure we are going to hear from him very soon on even a larger scale, the Singapore Care program that he's been asked to lead. So thank you everybody, and thank you for logging in. And after this, we'll send you the information as requested. Thank you,
KK, thank you very much for stepping forward and doing this guide. My brother and sister, Harry and Elias do it free of charge. It will cost us a lot of money if we get a professional lawyer firm to do it, but they do it out of what we call a greater good for the community. So KK and the team, thank you very much. And for thank you. And for my brother and sisters, it's not goodbye, but it's still, we meet again.
Thank you very much to Dr. Ang, KK, and all of you here once again for spending your time here with us today, for tuning in and giving us your afternoon. And we wish all of you a pleasant and lovely week ahead.
Thank you, Vanessa. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.